Ford just made a move so bold, it has Donald Trump seeing red, and it could change everything you think you know about American industry. This wasn't a quiet corporate decision. It was a direct challenge to Trump's America First policies. Why did Ford take this risk? How did Trump respond? And most importantly, what does this mean for American jobs and for you? Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. What's happening? Ford just delivered a message so bold, it's shaking the foundations of American politics. It wasn't a subtle announcement, nor was it wrapped in corporate jargon. It was a direct statement of intent that sent shockwaves across the nation. Ford, an emblem of American manufacturing and ingenuity for over a century, declared its plan to shift a significant portion of its electric vehicle production overseas. For many, this wasn't just a business decision, it was a bombshell. Ford, a company deeply embedded in the fabric of American industry, was no longer playing by the rules set by former President Donald Trump. The decision felt like a defiance of the America First ethos that Trump had championed during his presidency. But Ford wasn't just walking away, it was sending a clear message. Survival in the modern automotive market demanded global competitiveness, even at the cost of tradition. The boldness of this move can't be understated. For decades, Ford stood as a symbol of American resilience, weathering economic storms and staying true to its roots. This announcement marked a turning point, a moment where legacy met reality. Yet, Ford didn't present this shift as a surrender to globalization. Instead, it framed the decision as a leap forward, emphasizing sustainability and innovation. This is more than an announcement, it's a turning point that's redefining the rules of the game. But Ford's announcement didn't just stop there. It lit a firestorm of outrage from Donald Trump. Trump's outrage, Trump's reaction. Explosive doesn't even begin to cover it. The former president, known for his unfiltered and combative style, was quick to respond. At a rally just days after Ford's announcement, Trump thundered, "We built Ford, the American worker built Ford, and now they've turned their backs on us." The crowd roared in agreement, waving signs that read, "Bring jobs back," and "Buy American." This wasn't just a political soundbite, it was a declaration of war. Trump framed Ford's decision as a betrayal, not just of his policies but of the American people. He accused the company of abandoning its workers and values in pursuit of cheaper labor and materials overseas. This is what happens when corporations prioritize profits over patriotism, he proclaimed, his words cutting deep into the emotions of his supporters. But Trump's outrage wasn't limited to speeches. He took to his social media channels, rallying his followers and calling for a boycott of Ford vehicles. "Do not support a company that turns its back on America," he posted, his words quickly spreading across the internet. The message was clear. Ford had crossed a line, and Trump was determined to make them pay for it. But Trump's outrage wasn't the only thing Ford was prepared for. They had a bold response ready. To understand why Ford made such a bold move, we need to dig deeper into the challenges they were facing. Why Ford made this move? What pushed Ford to take such a risky stand against Trump's policies? To understand, we need to talk about the unique pressures facing the automotive industry, and Ford in particular. The cornerstone of Trump's economic platform was protectionism. Tariffs on imported goods, incentives for domestic production, and a rallying cry for companies to buy American, hire American. While these policies resonated with many, they created significant challenges for industries reliant on global supply chains. For Ford, the tipping point came with Trump's tariffs on essential materials like lithium and cobalt, key components in electric vehicle batteries. The costs of domestic production began to soar. Lithium, often referred to as white gold for its value in EV manufacturing, was largely sourced and processed overseas. Tariffs on these materials drove prices up by double digits, squeezing profit margins and making it increasingly difficult for Ford to compete with companies like Tesla, which had streamlined their production processes. Supply chain disruptions only added to the chaos, creating delays and shortages that hampered Ford's ability to meet demand. Ford's leadership faced a tough choice: cling to traditional practices or adapt to a rapidly changing global market. Expanding electric vehicle production overseas wasn't just about cutting costs, it was about survival. The global demand for electric vehicles was skyrocketing, and Ford knew it needed to act decisively to secure its place in the race for EV dominance. But this wasn't just an economic decision, it was also a strategic pivot. But the ripple effects were immediate. Across the country, Americans were divided. Supporters of Trump's America First policies were furious, accusing Ford of selling out to globalization. Factory workers in Ford-heavy towns, from Michigan to Kentucky, worried about what the decision meant for their jobs and communities. On the other side of the spectrum, environmental advocates and progressive politicians praised Ford's boldness. They argued that the company was making the tough but necessary decisions to lead the automotive industry into a sustainable future. For them, Ford's focus on EV production wasn't a betrayal. It was a beacon of hope in the fight against climate change. The media frenzy only added fuel to the fire. Conservative outlets aligned with Trump, painting Ford as a symbol of corporate greed and disloyalty. Progressive channels, meanwhile, celebrated the move as a sign of progress. The narrative wasn't just about Ford, it was about what the company represented in a deeply divided America. For Ford, the stakes couldn't have been higher. The company's leadership knew they were walking a tightrope, balancing their commitment to innovation with the weight of their legacy. Internally, employees and executives debated the long-term impact of the decision. Would Ford's pivot to global EV production strengthen its position in the market? Or would it erode the trust and loyalty it had spent decades building? This was just the beginning. Ford's announcement had set the stage for a high-stakes showdown. As the dust began to settle, both sides prepared for a clash that would shape the narrative even further. Trump's declaration of war. Trump didn't just criticize Ford. He declared war. At a fiery rally packed with supporters, Trump turned Ford's announcement into a rallying cry. "We built Ford. The American worker built Ford. And this is how they repay us? By shipping your jobs overseas? By turning their back on everything this country stands for?" His voice thundered across the crowd, eliciting cheers and chants of "USA! USA!" This was no ordinary criticism. Trump's words were designed to sting, and they did. He framed Ford's decision as a betrayal of the American worker and the country's industrial legacy. "We gave Ford everything: tax cuts, incentives, and a loyal workforce," he declared, "and they stabbed us in the back." The stakes for Trump were personal. During his presidency, Ford had been a symbolic partner in his economic vision, often touted as an example of American manufacturing excellence. Now, Ford's move to expand electric vehicle production overseas felt like a direct challenge to his America First ideology. Trump's supporters were quick to echo his outrage, flooding social media with calls to boycott Ford products and accusing the company of abandoning American values. Trump's fiery rhetoric wasn't just for show, it was strategic. He used Ford's decision to reignite his base and reinforce his vision of economic nationalism. "This isn't just about Ford," he proclaimed. "This is about every company that thinks it can put profits over patriotism. We won't stand for it." Trump's words fueled a national firestorm, but Ford wasn't backing down. While Trump was rallying his base, Ford had its own response ready. Ford's defiant response. Ford fired back, not with anger, but with calculated strategy. In a carefully crafted press release, the company doubled down on its decision, emphasizing that it wasn't abandoning the US, but adapting to the realities of a globalized market. "We remain deeply committed to American jobs and innovation," the statement read, highlighting Ford's recent investments in US-based electric vehicle plants in states like Michigan and Kentucky. Ford's leadership knew they couldn't afford to be seen as a company turning its back on its home country. To counter Trump's accusations, they pointed to billions of dollars already invested in domestic EV production and infrastructure. These efforts, they argued, were proof of their dedication to the American workforce. But Ford didn't stop there. The company framed its move as a bold step toward global sustainability. By ramping up EV production overseas, Ford positioned itself as a leader in the green revolution, aiming to meet growing international demand while reducing its environmental footprint. This isn't just about staying competitive, it's about leading the way toward a sustainable future, Ford's CEO James Farley stated in an interview. The message was clear. Ford wasn't retreating, it was evolving. Still, the tension between their global ambitions and their American roots was undeniable. Could Ford convince the public that its decision was in the best interest of everyone? Ford wasn't just responding, they were reshaping the narrative. The conflict didn't just stay in press releases, it exploded across the media. The media frenzy. The clash between Ford and Trump became a spectacle no one could ignore.